I will be your moon. You will be my sky. And I promise I will follow you until the end of the line. And I will be your flower if you will be the bee. And I promise I will always give you the sweetest parts of me. 'Cause you're the tip to my top, the key to my lock, you're my breakfast in the morning. You're my up to my down and the king of my crown. And you're everything I want, you got that sweet, sweet, sweet honey. And I want it sweet, sweet honey. You got that sweet, sweet honey. And I want it sweet, sweet, sweet honey. So give it to me.
Oh my gosh, old habits really, genuinely die hard. I gotta do it because I'll be thinking about it the whole time if I don't. That was Sweet Honey by Scarlett Park. I'm sure you're going to be hearing more from this young lady on Spotify and certainly more on this show. This is WYCD, that's Wicked, and it stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake coming to you from the void. I'm very excited about today's show because we have multiple segments dealing with my favorite topic, which is how you can increase your power. Your political power, just improve your life. I know, seems like silly self-help stuff. It's genuinely not, it's math. And it is fun, but going into it, it's a little something called catharsis. Ooh, hey, we're back. Fantastic. This man has, his story has effect on what the political landscape might look like in the U.S. He was a socialist leader in Brazil, and he was a worker organizer, and he was the president in the early 2000s. I think 2003 to 2010. But during his time as president, Brazil moved up in the world. He still had to fight a lot of the same corruption, frankly, we do here. But it was exaggerated because the country had the United States picking on it for a long time. Under his second term as president, Brazil became a net creditor 2008 for the first time. And then he was imprisoned. He was imprisoned after he got out of office. He was imprisoned by his political opponents. And that began something called the Free Lula movement, which I first even heard about through a man named Michael Brooks. And I'll tell you, right now, Michael Brooks, unfortunately, he passed away in 2020. But right now, from somewhere, he is smiling. If there wasn't an afterlife, it was invented just so Michael Brooks could have this moment. That's Lula da Silva, out of prison, ran for office again against Jair Bolsonaro, and beat him handily. Bolsonaro was a far right extremist, and there's Lula, freshly sworn in. There is a bright future for Brazil now. There's really no point in audio for this unless you speak Portuguese. Oh, heck yeah, Lula. I might talk more about Lula because he is, his story is a useful one for talking about how seemingly insurmountable change can, or seemingly insurmountable opposition can be overcome and lead to positive change. He, oh man. We got the link to the NBC video, of course, in the description. But Lula's elements of his story really echo in the U.S. For example, the turning point in his imprisonment. So he's already in prison, quite literally a political prisoner. And then telegram messages between the prosecutor and the judge were leaked and were found to, not sure how I can phrase this, allegedly show them colluding to imprison him so that he could not run again. That really began the shift, because after that, new fact after new fact got discovered to the point where all charges were eventually dropped against Lula, and that led to the swearing in that you just saw. His new campaign for presidency. I think Brazil has a bright future now. So let's talk about America's bright future, huh? Max Frost is a very young man who just won political office. He is interviewed by ABC. He's a representative-elect right now, so he's not actually in office. But he did get a first interview with a major network. And when I saw the headline for this video, I jumped to conclusions. I started typing up the show notes for today. I was like, oh, Max Frost off to a bad start. Max Frost lets us down already. Yeah, I was trying to process this information, but I'm listening to the interview, and I had to replay it because the ABC title was Max Frost saying, or was a quote from him, and it was snipped out of context, and it says that compromise is necessary. Basically, the standard centrist Dem line, which went very much against what I had heard Max Frost campaigning on. It is not so. Don't fall for it. Let's look at the interview. It tells you about who he is, if you're not familiar with his path to politics, and it tells you about who he's going to be in office.
At just 25 years old, Maxwell Frost became an overnight political sensation after winning a 10-way primary for an open house seat in Florida. When he takes office next week, the gun control activist and part-time Uber driver will become the youngest member of Congress, where the average lawmaker is more than twice his age. We sat down together at the iconic Capitol Hill restaurant Bull Feathers to talk about his new role and the future of the Democratic Party. You haven't been sworn in yet, but do you feel like a member of Congress yet?
I'm definitely feeling the love, especially from a lot of the Democrats, especially in the different caucuses I'm joining.
And when you were running, you had to do some Uber work, right? You worked as an Uber driver.
Yeah.
Because you needed to, you needed to live while you were also running for Congress. What's it going to be like up here? I mean, this is not cheap. Do you have to...
Yeah. I mean, it's not cheap. I'm dealing with it right now, getting denied from apartments, trying to figure out where to live because I have bad credit. Probably just gonna have to like couch surf for a little bit.
You're actually, so you're 25, soon to be 26, but you've actually been at this a long time. I mean, you're kind of like a veteran political activist.
I've been in this for 10 years. Actually, just last night, I spoke at the vigil for all victims of gun violence right down the road at St. Mark's Episcopal Church. And I've been going to that vigil for 10 years, since I was 15 years old. And
it was Sandy Hook, which was one of those tragedies that, you know, you can think, like, where were you when you heard the news of that horrific massacre? But that's what got you into this.
That's what got me into it, yeah. I mean, I went to arts high school, middle school, and before every jazz band concert, my best friends and I would go across the street to this restaurant, load up on a ton of junk food, and I remember there eating, and there was a silence that fell across the restaurant. We looked up at the television screens and saw that somebody walked into an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, and murdered 20 children and 6 teachers. And I remember at the show that night I was playing, couldn't think straight, kept looking at the exits, so was very anxious.
Relatable.
And it's really what propelled me to come up to here to the vigil and dedicated my life to fighting for a world where there's no gun violence.
So I saw one of your campaign ads features this interaction you had with DeSantis.
Before we get into that, this is just because of his age, because of the harsh reality he grew up in, which is the one we have to live in. He is indeed one of the most relatable politicians in America. I don't think you have to be relatable to be a good politician, but it certainly helps. It helps that he understands that when young folks see a mass shooting, or when people who can't afford to just stay home see a mass shooting, it makes them look at their surroundings in a way that rich folks don't have to.
2 months ago, I confronted Governor DeSantis on ending gun violence. And what did he say?
Nobody wants to hear from you. What was going on there?
Yeah, so look, Governor DeSantis never comes to Orlando, and when he does, it's to either do a press conference where he's spewing bigotry and hate, or to make money for his friends, which is exactly what he was doing there. He was a special guest at a private thing for a podcaster. And so we, in the spirit of direct action and protest, we decided to show up. And look, I didn't stand up and yell and curse at him or anything. I just stood up and said, you know, Governor, what's your plan to end gun violence? We're dying. And this was...
Normally, I try not to listen to the whole clip all the way through. This is what made me double check that. I try not to. I try to do like a raw listening here live with you, so that you can get just a more natural reaction. In this case, though, I did listen to the whole thing because I'm hearing that, and I'm like, how does this guy arrive at let's compromise as a main talking point? Let's compromise with these people.
About a week and a half after the Uvalde shooting,
he explains
he hadn't said a
like
single word about ending gun violence. And so we came to him more with a plea. And what I got in return was nobody wants to hear from you, getting dragged out by security, having popcorn thrown at me. And
how satisfying will it be if this guy winds up taking DeSantis's job in some form? Oh.
people yelling curse words and racial slurs.
And what was the reception that you got for that ad? I mean, that kind of, and the moment went viral.
Yeah.
I mean, getting shouted down by the Republican governor as a young candidate, as a Democrat, must actually not been a bad thing.
Yeah, well, we decided to flip it on its head and use it, and we put it on broadcast in the district. We, got nothing but people giving us calls and sending us messages saying, "I saw your ad. I haven't seen an ad like that ever or in a long time."
But you were sent to campaign in Georgia. You hadn't even been sworn in yet as a member of Congress, but you were campaigning for Raphael Warnock.
Yeah.
And I noticed you playing drums at a Students for Warnock event.
That was in an indoor skate park. It's one of the coolest campaign events I've ever been to.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're going to be seeing more of that? I mean, you're a jazz drummer?
Yeah. I play jazz, hip hop, different styles. Yeah, of course. I mean, something that I want to work on. It's a bit more extracurriculars, bringing the arts more on the Hill, having concerts on the Hill, stuff like that. I think it's important. The arts it's really important to me. I mean, it's at the level of politics for me.
What do you want to kind of define your time in
I apologize for being trashy just then. I'm a little trashy, though.
Congress?
Yeah, I mean, I want to get things done, right? And I want to make sure that, I know we have to compromise to get things done, especially in this next Congress, but I never want to lose sight of our North Star. I think we're in this politics now where people are scared to talk about their North Star, even in my own party, right? And I think it's important that we not lose sight of that. Healthcare for everybody, ending gun violence, combating the climate crisis. These things.
Listen to the difference here. The difference between ABC's video title, which is "We Have to Compromise," to what he is saying. We have to compromise, but.
Things are really important, and even though we're not going to get it next year, you can't take a first step in a journey if you don't know where you're going, right?
With Democrats, you have a debate between those that want to take the incremental win and those that say, no, we've got to hold out for something bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can seem that way, and I think that's part of it, but I think it's less of an ideological battle and more of a battle of figuring out what are we talking about and what are we doing in this moment. It's not that progressives and it's not that me and that I don't believe in incremental change, right? I've been working in gun violence for 10 years. We just got some incremental change with the bipartisan gun safety package that was passed. It wasn't everything that we need, but it's a good first step to ensuring that we end gun violence. I think it's important to realize that it's okay to ask for a lot. In fact, that's why people have sent us here. It doesn't mean we're not going to compromise for something else, but it means we shouldn't show up at the debate already at the compromise.
There it is. There it is exactly. I mean, I don't like when people are like, oh, this young man actually has some sense. Plenty of young folks speak plenty of truth. It's rare for a politician at all to be that on point, to be that laser accurate. Max Frost just said, yeah, we have to compromise because we live in the real world, and to get things done, we're going to have to deal with other forces, sure. But don't show up pitching the compromise, which is what Democrats do. They sit down and they say amongst themselves, we want X. I say Democrats, but I really mean centrist Dems. Centrist Dems sit down and say, we want X. But Republicans will want A. So let's just go and pitch them F. Way, way closer to what the Republicans want. And then Republicans will negotiate from there. So we end up with Democrats supporting extraordinarily right-wing policy. And it has gotten us where we are. Max Frost represents a generation which has seen that nonsense. Generation, I suppose, in terms of politics, not necessarily age, but a generation of politicians that have seen that nonsense and don't put up with it. I would include that fella from New Jersey that just dunked on Oz, Fetterman. Different age, same generation of politicians. He is a Max Frost and Fetterman are great examples of people that do not put up with that nonsense. You might see more titles like the one ABC put out of interviews with Max Frost, where they make it seem like this young cat is supporting centrist Dems. Don't let him fool you. Listen to what the guy has to say, because everything I've seen so far, at least, shows him to be an incredibly astute politician who is going to be a very positive force in the United States of America. Side note, sorry I was vaping on stream there. As I said, I'm a little trashy. I don't encourage you to do these things. It's bad for you. Also might mean it takes me a little bit longer to get that video up, so I don't accidentally encourage some kid just getting into politics to smoke anything. So TYT just did a little bit ago. They did a video looking at some interesting numbers, which say that millennials and Gen Z are spending more money on luxury goods than you might think. I have a take on this myself, and it's probably not where you might think it's going. Even after you hear the fact that this will relate to how you can increase your own political power. It's not to stop buying luxury goods altogether. It's not to give that money to a political party. But let's first hear the numbers from TYT's Anna Kasparian, who has a ponytail that I find intimidating and therefore awesome.
A shockingly high percentage of young adults in America are living at home with their parents. Now, this is an ongoing trend, as we know, following the 2008 recession. More and more young people had to stay living with their parents because they couldn't make ends meet and make enough money to afford rent, afford a mortgage. And that trend, unfortunately, has only been exacerbated in recent years. Housing is incredibly unaffordable. And Morgan Stanley says this is actually a good development for luxury brands. Their argument is, well, I mean, young adults are now living with their parents because they can't pay rent. That means they're saving money on rent, and they're actually spending it on luxury items. And I was like, no, they're not. That's not true. But they have a point. So let me give you the details. US Census data shows that nearly half of all young adults from ages 18 to 29 still live at home, the highest level recorded since the end of the Great Depression in 1940. Morgan Stanley attributes this growth to the rising cost of rental prices. Wow, great analysis. Wow, really took a genius to figure that one out. The greater enrollment in higher education and the delaying of marriage. Now, according to the analysis led by Edward Aubin, the structural trend has been overlooked in the context of rising luxury spending over the past decade. As older Gen Zs and younger millennials have their rent and food paid for by their parents, their discretionary spending increases, allowing them to buy up more designer handbags, watches, and jewelry. Okay. Listen, if you're living at home with your parents, for me personally, love you, Mom. I know you're watching. You're the best. You're a great mother. I'm very happy I don't live with you, okay? Like, Mom was.
So this is the beginning of, I don't want to even say a bad take. It's just, I think Anna is missing some of the point here. And I have seen this, I watched this fuller clip before. I just didn't have anything to say about it. Jank does counteract her, I believe, quite a bit. But what I'd like to say is that what they were talking about doesn't just encompass people that live with their parents. It also encompasses people that are living on their own and paying rent, but simply understand that the math does not work out for them to ever be able to afford a house. So when they have a little bit of extra money, instead of putting that in $200 in a savings account, they're buying a $200 handbag because they will never have $200 often enough to save any realistic amount towards a home. They'll never have $40,000. And they probably have terrible credit, so they're not going to get a loan. I feel like that's what she's missing, but let's go on and give her a little bit more time here.
All up in my business. Where are you going? When are you coming home? Why aren't you wearing slippers? Your feet are gonna get cold. Like, I can't do it. Like, I can't do it. And I'm pretty sure these young adults are feeling that pain too.
True.
Put your money in a savings account with interest. Okay, but I'm not judging. You want the watches, you want the luxury items, do you, booze? But is it true? Are they really like sparking this increase in luxury brands? Yeah, it turns out it's true. So first, I'm gonna give you the Morgan Stanley report. They argue when young adults free up their budget for daily necessities, they simply have more disposable income to be allocated to discretionary spending. That's true. This is, of course, not the only reason luxury goods consumers are getting younger in the West. Social media playing also an important part, but we see it as fundamentally positive for the industry. So what are the numbers, right? Let's take a look at the luxury item market and what percentage of young adults make up that market of consumers. The average age of luxury shoppers also is dropping, with half of all purchases by people in their mid-20s to early 40s, while up-and-coming Gen Z, now in their teens to mid-20s, account for nearly 20% of luxury sales. Gen Z, by the way, are expected to account for 40% of the global personal luxury goods market by 2035, which, by the way, makes a lot of sense because by 2035, which is quite a long time from now, they're gonna be more established with their careers. They're gonna have more money to spend on whatever they want.
Okay, and we're going to get to how this directly can affect you positively in a moment. But let's be clear about something. They're going to have more money just by nature of being promoted in the jobs they are in and finding maybe new careers, better paying jobs. But are those jobs going to be so much better paying that they can afford a house? It's not either or. In fact, most cases, because there is such a thing as variance even in your personal finance, where there's a sudden change, a spike, but not regular, not a constant upward trend. You might get a tax break, or you might win a scratch-off lottery ticket and get $100. When these things happen, you can, sure, you could, as she suggests, put it in a savings account. And in fact, let me go back to this. It might be unfair to end Anna Kasparian early there, because she generally comes around and has a pretty decent take on this or that. But I really wanted the numbers out of that clip. So yeah, you could, in theory, put it in a savings account. But what are you saving for? To buy a house? If you haven't built any credit, you're not saving for the down payment on the house. You got to save for the whole thing. If you live in Detroit, you might be able to get a house for as low as, let's say $25,000. This house is falling apart, and you are, to make it livable, going to have to pay to fix it up. But let's just keep it simple, $25,000. That will represent decades of your life if you're only able to save a couple of $100 every few months. Decades of your life. And by the time that's up, it's not going to be worth $25,000 anymore. It's going to be worth double that. So, young people are not frivolously buying these goods. They're buying these goods to get a taste of the American dream that they were promised but don't see. You get a nice handbag. While you're walking out on the street, you get to feel for a moment like you're somebody. Then you go home to your parents. You feel that ping of shame. But while you were walking out on the street, you felt good. Okay. Let's talk about how you can build your war chest. Maybe that's you, buying the luxury goods. Maybe it's not. Regardless, that variance will crop up in your life where you get some extra money. Let's be realistic. You need to have fun sometimes. I don't even suggest you take that every time and put it in a savings account. What I do suggest you do is start a swear jar. By which I mean, you can get a literal jar in your house, apartment, whatever. And every time your boss or the company you work for makes you so mad that you want to swear, reach into your pocket, put $1 in it. Don't have $1, put 10 cents in it. Don't have 10 cents, pick it up and look at it. And remember, make it a marker in your mind that you felt this way. The reason to do this is so that you can build a war chest. What is a war chest? It is a silly term, but it has a quite a literal meaning. Ooh. Well, it appears I don't have the slide. What it refers to is a cache of money. And it doesn't have to be $25,000. No. It can be simply enough money to take advantage of a situation when it arises. What your war chest is for should change based on how much is in there. So you build your personal war chest. And let's say that after 6 months, you have $300 in there. You were very dedicated. You did put a lot in there. That is now enough to pay for a day off of work. It's not much, but it's something. Let's set some goals for that war chest. Figure out how much money you need, and this is going to change for everybody based on their personal situation. But figure out how much money you need to not work for 1 month, to pay 1 month of all of your bills. It's going to be a lot, but it's going to be easier to get to than putting down a down payment on a house. Put money, yes, into a savings account via your boss swear jar, if that's the way you want to do it. But do so with the goal of being able to leave your job for a better one. A lot of times, what prevents somebody from leaving a job that's killing them slowly is simply that they can't afford to. They'll be homeless if they do. Now, look, personal tragedy is going to hit. You're going to have a major car expense and find that your war chest gets depleted. But that is why the war chest has a shifting goal. And every time you put money in it, you will feel better because you will be more powerful and you'll know it. You'll have more negotiating power at your job. Simply being able to leave your job and know that you have 1 month to find a new one is a mighty powerful thing. It also makes your negotiation when it comes time for raises easier. Say you work a job where you have to sign a contract, your contract ends, and they say, well, come on in, let's talk about what we need to get you to sign a new contract. It is a lot easier to not sign a new contract and say, let's just keep things the way they are for now, and I'll think about it. If you know that at any moment you can leave and have 30 days to find a new job. If you only have that $300 in it, and that's enough for you to take a day or two off of work, you can use that day or two, call in sick, because fuck them, and look for a new job. Use that day off to go job shopping, because you can afford to. Because a couple of times you put $20 in the chest. It's treating yourself in the future, and it is a more attainable goal than just buying a new house. It makes you more likely to get a job, which will let you earn money at a rate that will let you buy a house, rather than simply trying to save up for a effing house while you work at a Wendy's. If you're incompetent, let's take that literal example. If you work at the Wendy's and your incompetent coworker just got made shift lead when you've been there for a year longer and do a better job, it's time to go apply at the other McDonald's around town for the position of shift lead. And if you have set aside a little bit of money, then you have that ability. If you start building now for your war chest, and you build up a big enough war chest, you might find that you're in a position where you can participate in a strike. Strikes work. This would be if you're in an industry you love, but you hate the people that make decisions about that industry. Maybe you're in a company that you've invested a lot of your time into, and you don't want to leave the company, but you're sick of a few basic things. Maybe you do have a union. Maybe you don't. But you decide you want to participate in a strike. Reddit user Captain Levi 007 posted this from Matt Brunig. And it's a fun series of events that just happened in Finland. Postal Service cut pay for 700 sorters. A strike was called, and 60,000 workers joined in solidarity, shutting down the docks, rail, buses, and airlines. 60,000 workers in solidarity with 700 sorters. So first of all, remember, gang up on the billionaires. If the Starbucks union goes on strike, ask them how you can help, because you striking might be part of that. The Postal Service canceled the pay cut, the Minister of State ownership resigned, and the Prime Minister resigned. Start building your war chest so that you can be one of those 60,000. Yes, easier said than done. But a down payment on a house is probably not doable for the average American worker under the age of 50. But a strike is. But taking a month off work is, if you prepare now. In boxing, the majority of the punches are not knockout blows. In fact, the majority of the punches are jabs. I can't think of a time somebody has been knocked out with a jab. But the jab is incredibly important. Jabbing in boxing maneuvers the opponent. You get points on the cards. It's a way to keep your opponent busy and harried. And it's the most boring punch to talk about. And yet, it's arguably the most important. Build a war chest. $20 at a time, $5 at a time. And understand that you don't need the knockout blow. You just need enough money to jab a couple of times. We did a poll recently on the channel asking what people most wanted to hear about. What were people, what solutions did we want to work towards as a group? The winner, handily, was getting big money out of politics. I think that's probably a good choice, frankly. And fortunately, a lot of America already agrees with us. What America does not know as well is what to do about it. There is a plan. It's going to involve a knockout, and to get to that knockout, we got to jab. I'm going to show you how to jab. This is from Citizens Take Action. It's a group which exists entirely to push things like this, and specifically the Restore Our Democracy Amendment. Let's have a look. First of all, why are we here? How come there is such a thing as big money in politics, super PACs, and all that? Citizens Take Action sums it up well. Believe it or not, before some recent Supreme Court decisions, the American political system was not always so skewed in favor of the wealthy and powerful. In fact, dating back to the Tillman Act of 1907 and the Taft-Hartley Act of 1947, Congress limited the ability of corporations and labor unions to make contributions or expenditures in connection with political campaigns. My God, we are a long-winded bunch. The influx of money from corporations, unions, and ultra-wealthy individuals in recent decades is due largely to a few poorly reasoned Supreme Court decisions. This includes one called Buckley v. Vallejo and one called Citizens United. We're about to talk about those. The best way to understand how our campaign finance laws became so horribly dysfunctional is to understand those decisions, which are explained below. I've got the summary for you here. This is roughly a semester of poli-sci boiled down. Well done, Citizens Take Action. This is Buckley v. Vallejo, 1976. Court's decision starts on a positive note, acknowledging that there is compelling interest in preventing corruption or the appearance of corruption caused when individual donors make large financial contributions to candidates, noting that representative democracy is undermined by such large contributions. As a result, the court upheld limits on the amount that an individual could contribute to any given candidate for office, as well as the overall limit on the individual's total contributions during any calendar year. Well, that sounds like it was a good decision. Wait for the but. However, the court subsequently concluded that while limits on the amount of an individual can contribute to a candidate are permissible, limits on the amount an individual or group can spend relatively to a clearly identified candidate are not. In other words, John Q. Billionaire Trump cannot give $500,000 to a presidential candidate, but he can place $500,000 worth of ads telling you to vote for the very same candidate. In addition, the court struck down limits on the amount a candidate could spend from their own personal funds and overall limits on the amount a candidate could spend during the course of the campaign. The court reached its bizarre conclusion by claiming that the independent expenditures do not pose a significant risk of real or apparent corruption the same way that direct contributions do. But of course they do. Think about, you have two donors, one that gives you $15 and one that places $15,000 worth of campaign ads for you. Which one do you think is more important? Also, a rich person has an easier time participating in politics then than a poor person. Poor person has to dance for their money. A rich person can just say, I already made my employees earn all of this, so I'm just going to spend it on me to get more power, to bend the laws to fit me. That was Buckley v. Vallejo. It was 1976, though, and it got a lot worse in 2010. The Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002 prohibited corporations and labor unions from using their general treasury funds to make independent expenditures expressly advocating for the election or defeat of a candidate. It also prohibited electioneering communications, which were essentially broadcast cable or satellite communications that referred to a candidate for federal office and were made within 30 days, corporations or unions could set up separate segregated funds, such as a political action committee, a PAC, to fund such communications. Citizens United was a nonprofit corporation that challenged the law. So, first of all, bit of a joke to call it Citizens United. Second of all, this is why we are in the environment we're in. This is why the industry of election election campaigning is growing and takes up a larger percentage of your time. This is the source of our major corruption. This is how we have the unwanted fourth branch of our government, corporations. Got one more thing on background here. Bear with it for a moment because we're about to get to the solution. In a ruling that directly contradicted previous precedents set in Austin, the court held that even though corporations are unique entities that receive special benefits, those special benefits do not justify prohibitions on corporate political speech. In other words, after Citizens United, corporations and unions were free to spend unlimited amounts of money. Corporations and unions were free to spend unlimited amounts of money to influence elections. The court also went so far as to claim that censoring corporations has muffled the voice that best represents the most significant segments of the economy, and that by limiting corporate political speech, the electorate has been deprived of information, knowledge, and opinion vital to its function. No, it has not. If you work for a corporation, you are dependent upon them for your paycheck. They have undue sway over you. They don't represent your interests. They represent their own interests, and you represent their interests, but they don't represent your interests. And to give them unlimited influence in our elections is a travesty. But there is a solution, and we're sticking with Citizens Take Action because they have a solution which addresses everything we just talked about. There were other decisions which wore down, Supreme Court decisions, which wore down anti-corruption laws in America. This, however, is a solution that deals with Citizens United, Buckley v. Vallejo, and others. Let's have a look. we must pass a constitutional amendment to get big money out of politics because poorly reasoned Supreme Court decisions like, okay, there we go, Buckley and Citizens, are the primary reason big money has flooded our political system at unprecedented levels. No constitutional amendment can make every change we want on its own, true, but we cannot get big money out of politics without a constitutional amendment. Mostly true. An amendment has become necessary because the Supreme Court is the final arbiter of our campaign finance laws. So when they issue a bad decision, we cannot pass new laws to change it. That doesn't leave us with many options, but we cannot just sit idly by and wait for the Supreme Court to change its mind, because that may take many years, even decades, and even if the Supreme Court issues good campaign finance decisions, there is no assurance that the court won't change its mind again later. Also true. So what do we do? How do I make this happen? Get this amendment passed. Two ways. One is easy, one is less easy. You can do both from home in the chair you're sitting in right now. Link in the description. There is a volunteer form for Citizens Take Action. You can volunteer with them. This is the more difficult way. They're going to ask you to do things like make phone calls, write emails. They're going to ask you to, if you're an artist, maybe make art for them. Essentially be an influencer for this goal. Mostly what they're going to ask you to do is to contact other people in some manner and get them to do the second thing, the easy thing. If you do nothing else and you want big money out of politics, then do this. Thing number 2. Contact your representative. Contact your state senator. Put the wording in the description below. Tell them that you want them to endorse the Restore Our Democracy Amendment. Again, contact your representative, state senator, governor. Tell them that you want them to endorse the Restore Our Democracy Amendment. It's as simple as that. The great news for all of us is that this is not even a purely progressive issue. In fact, every block of voters in the United States counts this among their top issues. It will be easy to get people to do this. Just make it easy for them if you're a volunteer. Give them the link. But above all, harass your representative. Harass anyone who counts you among their constituents and tell them, be one of the many voices that they will hopefully hear, that you want them to do a public endorsement of the Restore Our Democracy Amendment. Look at this here. This was a 2019 Ipsos poll. So this was people that were just hopping to vote for Trump, as well as people that were begrudgingly voting for Biden. What are the top factors that influence your vote this November? Money in politics. Money in politics makes an appearance for every single group. Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. It will be very easy to get people on board with an amendment that gives corporations less power to influence politics. It will be very easy for you to speak with your representative. Frankly, you don't even talk to them directly, you just leave a message for them when you call. Or you write them an email, and that's even easier. But you tell them that you want them to do one thing. And it's not hard. As in, it's not complicated. and they're going to have a hard time wiggling out of it if they themselves are corrupt. You want them to publicly endorse the Restore Our Democracy Amendment. What we actually need is 34 states. But given that 100% of American voting blocks overall are in favor of this or something like this, simply they don't all have the exact words to discuss what they want done. Give them the words. Given that we have the voting blocks, the political will is there to do it. So give it form. If you're hearing this right now, click on the link. Contact your representative. These things tend to snowball. The more people hear the phrase, Restore Our Democracy Amendment, the more effective it will be, the more politicians will pick it up on their own. We talked about Maxwell Frost earlier in the show. Guys like that are going to jump on it with both feet. You'll get some support from places you will be surprised by. Matt Gaetz, for example, is in favor of getting big money out of politics. That's maybe his the only redeeming fact about him as a human being. You will have the support. I sure do enjoy getting fired up with you guys. I'll tell you what. I don't quite know yet when is going to be the normal time for this show to go up. I'll tell you, the only time that I know it won't be up is from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Because I will be watching the Majority Report, and I wouldn't want to take even a few viewers away from that hilarious show that is incredibly informative. But I will say, I'm going to start trying to go up at a predictable time just to make it easier on you if you're a fan of the show. And by the way, if you are a fan of the show, thank you. And drop in the comments whatever time you think would be the best. Our goal here is to grow a YouTube, an internet streaming show, but it's also to build a movement, and it's also to give the most amount of people the tools necessary to affect change in their lives, usually through politics, and very often through contacting representatives and telling them, giving them a script to say that puts into efficient language what we want done. Let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you for joining me today. This has been WYCD, also known as Wicked, also known as What You Can Do. My name's Jake. I'll see you next time.
Love, I've been up since like 3 a.m. I don't hear the hate, what y'all say ain't in. All I know is go, all I know is grind. I'm on your head, all I know is climb. Just know I'm different. If I see the target, just know I'm gonna hit it. I don't know the fake, just know I live it. Anything I say, just know I'm in it. I know the ops and they lightweight. I'm in the zone and I might stay. Yeah, I'm on in the right way. Check the scoreboard, look why I play. They say sky the limit, that's too low for us. We showing up in the nosebleeds of the galaxy. When you think of great, look, it's actually me. Yeah, it's actually me. Might just pull up on some nonsense. Ain't no limits on my conscience. I don't know, you don't know, we don't know. Stop us. I don't think nothing can stop us. Ain't none of y'all about to stop us. Might just pull up on some nonsense. Ain't no